Alright, I'm finally getting around to doing this video. This is something I've been wanting to do for ages. I finally need to get it just off my chest about two games in particular that I have gone on about in other videos, which is Tales of Xillia 1 and Tales of Xillia 2. I know it's weird because they're like obscure Japanese JRPGs, but I can't hold in all this vent that I need. So I'm just going to sort of just discuss the comparison between the two. And even if you haven't played these games, I recommend you stick around because I'll be talking a lot about Tales of Xillia 1. And if I was ever to make a top 5 games of all time list, this would definitely be on it. I'm going to tell you where. I'll probably make that list at some point, someday. But yeah, as for now, stick around. You might learn something. Whew, I tell you, it is hot. Hot, hot, hot. I'll be right back. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Where do we even start with this? To put this entire video in a nutshell, I am severely disappointed with Tales of Xillia 2. It's the same reason, really, why I was disappointed with Mass Effect 2 over Mass Effect 1, but there's a video for another day. Oh, there'll be a 40-minute fucking video. Tales of Xillia 2 totally drops the ball on everything that I enjoyed about Tales of Xillia 1. One of the biggest positives of the Xillia 1 is the way it handles story, which is pretty remarkable in my opinion. It starts off as like a simple conflict and it grows and grows and grows and grows the story to the point where at the end you just can't believe how the objective was at the start of the game. It seems trivial by comparison, but actually none of it feels like filler. Everything needs to happen for it to escalate to the point where it does, and it gives the story like a natural sense of progression. I will say this video contains mild spoilery-ish territory. I won't give away any of the main plot threads though. No major plot thread. Yeah, everything feels necessary. Everything feels like it needs to be in there. Like you couldn't just say, oh, well, you know, that part was just to do this, or if you chop that out, it wouldn't make sense because you need that progression. Tales of Xillia 2, in comparison, completely fucks up in that regard. Let's rewind a bit. Tales of Xillia 1, the storyline is that you're one of two characters and essentially you've been tasked with self-destroying a mega weapon or whatever. And pretty much multiple countries over different sides of water clash over the weapon, over who controls it, who should control it, whether or not it should be used at all. And before you know it, it's all escalated to a whole manner of mystic and crazy shit that goes down over this one weapon. That is sort of the narrative plotline that threads through. And while it doesn't sound particularly like whoa from the beginning, it's the way that everything happens and what happens and the characters that push it along, which make it really special. Tales of Xillia 2, the storyline is that it takes place a year after the first one. You are a whole nother character who takes place on a different continent, one of the other continents that these guys lived on. And how they're sort of coping with what happened at the end of the first game. Basically, this guy in this game figures out that he can go into alternate dimensions and basically see what could have happened given anyone had screwed up in the first game. This is an amazing storyline and I love this to bits because essentially the game ends in such a nice, clean way in the first one. To have the second game about what would have happened if one of those things that was necessary to happen in the first game didn't. And you know what this does? It totally squanders the opportunity to do interesting things. What if this character had died? What if this character had failed in its mission? What if any of these things that happened that could have snowballed a whole different situation? But no, this game, which goes for about 40 hours, squanders its runtime with going to alternate dimensions where a lake didn't exist, where in this one it did. A, this doesn't make any sense because, well, who's to decide where the frickin' lake came from? And B, you're telling me that that is the most interesting thing you could think of for the alternate dimension, then, I don't know, whether or not one of the characters had passed away or died? That would have been so interesting, and it was totally wasted. I kept waiting. I was at the 30-hour mark, and I'm like, when is this going to get interesting? And given, at that point, something interesting does happen with an alternate reality, and it's the first thing that actually changes the game for the rest of the plot. That is kind of unacceptable. I played 30 hours of a game waiting for some huge narrative punch to come and hook me at the 5-hour mark, and it just kept going, well, you know, maybe the next alternate reality we go to is really gonna, yeah, you know, fucking hook, line and sinker reeling me in. No, nothing like that ever happened, or not until like the very end. And even at the very end, when you finally get there, shit goes down, sort of. People do die. You don't know who it is. But nothing feels significant. Nothing feels like it needed to be there. And true, like, I will bring a little bit of history into this. Tales of Xillia 1 sort of ran out of development time towards the end of it, so a lot of the complaints about that game is that the last 3 or 4 hours feel really rushed. I didn't think so, but that is sort of like a agreed on thing among the Tales community. So, essentially, from what I've read on the internet, a lot of the ideas of what they wanted to do, given more development time at the end of Xillia 1, have gone into 2. So essentially, Xillia 2 is a lot of the scrap, a lot of the stuff that they deemed unnecessary, which really makes the entire game, for me, feel completely unnecessary. Especially when you have such a great raw idea like that, something that could pull a thread, like a plot line, just so beautifully, and you squander it. You squander it on secondary characters that really didn't have too much of an impact on the overall story, and you go and see where they would have been given if, you know, if certain events didn't happen to them. Is that really the best you can come up with? And the characters. Tales of Xillia 1 has some of my favourite characters in any game ever. And like a lot of you know, any of my personal friends know me or whatever, I'm a huge Metal Gear guy, I love everything Metal Gear. A huge problem I have with that series is that none of the characters really feel likeable. Like even Snake himself is like a total, just like washboard, doesn't understand anything he's doing. He just sort of repeats whatever people tell people. Snake, you need to go here and kill someone. Okay. In Tales of Xillia 1, every single one of the characters has a personality, they have conflicts, they have flaws, they have strengths, and they all interact with the other like 6 or so members of the party. And by the end of the game, you know which party members get along with who doesn't get along with who has like sort of a romantic interest together, who completely oppose each other. It's an amazing dynamic, and I've never had that with any other game before, particularly in games with like Mass Effect. Did you really know what the, I don't know, what the connection was between like Garrus and, I don't know, Rex? I don't know. There is connections here and there in those other sort of games, but like this game really makes you feel like every character is sort of a friend in their own sort of way, just like how you have friends. You, viewer, you have friends you're close with. You have friends you don't get along with. You have friends who have opposing ideals and stuff like that to you, but you all enjoy each other's company, and that's what this game gets perfectly. Now, Xillia 2. Xillia 2, what it essentially does is it adds 2 more characters, really only 1 more playable character. I guess you could say 2. 2 characters, so it's instead of a party of 6, I believe. It essentially bolsters it up to 8. This, to me, seemed like an interesting choice, being like, yeah, what would have happened if you threw an extra 2 friends into that mix of that tight 6 clique that they had going on? Nothing, apparently. No more conflict. It's everything from the first game. People still get along with the people who they don't, and these people just sort of sink in and they just sort of sit there as anomalies of the group while the other 6 are like this tight group. You always kind of feel like the main character, Luger, he just sort of is there, and everyone's like, well, that's Luger. He's just a part of the group now. We're not going to argue with that. We're not going to, you know, not going to be really any full conflict. The second game, instead of having like a really tight narrative structure, it kind of relies sort of on a moral choice system, which feels completely, and actually is completely arbitrary. You don't actually need it. It does nothing until the very ending. So you can play a good guy all the way up to the very end, and on the last choice, choose a bad decision, you're gonna get the bad ending. Totally useless. It's besides the point. The combat, I will give, is better in the second game. It is a lot better in the second game. The first game is like really tight and gives you lots of different options to sort of punch and sword and kick and whatever, and it was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. The second game actually gives you the first for the Tales series ever. It gives you the ability to swap between weapons on the fly. So you can have a sledgehammer, you can have 2 swords, you can have 2 guns. Hey. Yeah, so like the combat is really, really good, and I'll be honest, like one of the big hooks, the thing that made me want to keep playing, which is rare. I'm a big story guy. Playing Tales of Xillia 2, it was a lot of fun. I don't know, the story was absolutely trash in my opinion. I've read some people online who just like love it. They think it was so interesting. I'm just like, what are you playing? What? What are you playing? Obviously a lot of Final Fantasy fans out there. Oh, shots fired. I totally disagree with them. I think they're absolutely crazy. The storyline is rubbish, but the combat, the combat is so satisfying. They just added more layers onto what the combat of Tales of Xillia 1 sort of built. Apart from just the raw fighting and the weapons that you get in number 2, you also have this thing called the Chromatus, which completely breaks any difficulty that the game had to begin with. Essentially what it is you get to go Super Saiyan. You turn from little brown-haired kid to this giant muscular rock monster thing. It's a bit hard to describe, but you have this giant lance and you become invulnerable for up to like 30 seconds, I think it is, in which you can just like totally fucking waste everything on the battlefield. And like, it recharges in about a minute, so like, if you have any decent battle, you can just destroy any challenge that you may have had. Which, as much as it broke the game, I had a lot of trouble with how hard Tales of Xillia 1 was, but it was always a good difficulty. It kicked my teeth in, but you come out of every battle like, oh man, I fucking earned this. Tales of Xillia 2, while not nearly as difficult because I flew through that game. Like, I can't remember any battle I had in 2 where I was just like ready to throw the controller, which I guess is a kind of a good thing, but it was always because the Chromatus just breaks the game. Like, you're having a bit of trouble, or just whip out the Chromatus and cream the opposition. Tales of Xillia 1, for instance, I had this one battle very early on in the game. If you've played it, you know you're in the forest and you bump into this guy with a giant hammer, and he like claims ownership over the young girl who's with you. I was on that game, I was on that boss for no joke, like 4 hours one night, just over and over and over and over and over again, just like doing my head in until I had to stop, go to bed, refresh myself, come back in the morning, tinker with all the battle variables, and I finally beat him. But it was a fucking ordeal, I tell you what. The one good thing that these games do really, really well, if you are interested in playing them, is the combat variables, which no one ever seems to talk about, but I really enjoy them as a newcomer to the Tales series. As someone who played a lot of Ys before this, I love the Ys series, also really good. Tales of Xillia essentially lets you program each of your AI, not just like all AI saying like attack, defend, parry. You seriously get to go in and say, at this point in your health, I want you to do this. I want you to do this until there. If you become below this, but if you're over this, do this. Blah 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 blah, and you can actually like string commands together, and it's like so satisfying when you're getting just pummeled by an enemy, and you finally find that one string for each one of your party members that works beautifully, and they all just come together as a team, and you fuck up. It is great. It is really, really good, and it pumps me out. So yeah, sorry, got my little vent out. Tales of Xillia 2 felt like a bad expansion, like a bad $60 expansion that I paid for, and Tales of Xillia 1 feels like one of the greatest games I've ever played, and I really do mean that. Not many games have lingered that with me. I don't think there's been another game which has made me want to immediately replay it so badly. I don't... Maybe Mass Effect 1. Or Fallout 3, or something like that. I finished that game and I was like, I have to just replay it. Unfortunately, I'm trying to pummel through all the other Tales games so I can sort of have more of a reference when I talk about this sort of stuff. And so far, Tales of Symphonia is really good, but it has not aged well at all, so it's difficult to play. I'm currently smashing through Tales of Graces and Tales of Hearts R. I think, what's the other one? I've got another Tales game, I can't remember which one it is. As you said, they're good. Maybe if they're good enough, I'll do another video on them, but at the moment, play that game. Play it. It's so good. If I know you in person, I'm probably going to throw this game at you at some point and be like, do this with your life, son. Yeah, thanks for listening to me rant. I don't like Tales of Xillia 2. I love Tales of Xillia 1. Both have positives in their own aspect. Tales of Xillia 1 has like very little flaws, in my opinion, but I don't know. Play it and find out for yourself. Thanks for watching.